All right, guys. It is 12:06. I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to go through this presentation, and then I do have time for questions at the end and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm Chris Bagg. I'm the owner of Campfire Endurance Coaching. We operate out of Portland, Oregon, and Bend, Oregon, which is where I live now. Company's been around in one form or another since 2009, which is when I sold some wheels to a dude in Australia. And he asked me, how do you glue these tires on these wheels? And I sent him like a 3-page answer. And he was like, you seem like you know a lot about like endurance sports. Like, do you want to coach me? I was racing professionally at the time. And I was like, sure. And that was 15 years ago. And here I am now. So you guys are all here ostensibly because you're interested in succeeding at long course triathlon, which is the title of this particular webinar today. Let me make sure that I've got I got my presenter window. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And this meeting is being recorded, just so you know. So if there's anything that you are not excited about that, you can let me know. And afterwards we can like blur you out or something like that. But yeah, we're here to talk about having success at long course triathlon. And what I mean by long course, I mean somewhere like basically above 70.3 distance. These days, 70.3 is kind of becoming, I would call it more middle distance, but if you've ever had a chance to do the really good ITU long distance, which is a 3 to a 4K swim, 120K on the bike, which is like 75 to 80 miles, and a 30K run, about 18 and a half, I'd say that ends up in long course triathlon as well. And then, of course, the iron distance race, which is ostensibly the reason that a lot of you guys are here. And we're going to change your chances for qualifying by adopting an abundance approach to your fitness and your mindset around training. Please note that I put chances of qualifying. Just see that there's an image. Oh, no worries, Salvo. I understand. And it looks like I just had somebody else. Wow, I can really see that you would want like an admin or something to help you out with these meetings while they are going on, because I also just got a message that someone wants to come in. Okay. Let me just put these where they go. Okay, it looks like I need to stop the share to let in our folks. All right, looks like we got Luis and Chris joining us. Guys, we had just gotten started, so I'm going to throw the presentation back up and we will continue. And I hope that that will be sort of our last one of those. So we're talking about we're improving our chances for qualifying. It's only ever going to be a probability that you can qualify for some of these longer races. So that's qualifying for the Iron Distance World Championships in Nice or in Kona. Challenge Roth is a qualification race now. ITU Long Distance Worlds. It's only ever a chance. There's never going to be a shoe-in that you can qualify. But the whole point of today is improving, teaching you guys what you need to know in order to create a physiology and a mindset that can succeed at long distance triathlon. That's the thing that we're trying to work on today. That's how we're going to change your guys' chances for qualifying. So you can do it yourself. We would love to work with you if you want to work with us. We have a few current athletes in here, but I really think that there's a lot of misconceptions about how qualifying works and how getting better at triathlon works. And I really would like to change those because I see a lot of people aiming for qualification as an outcome goal and they're not thinking about it or preparing for it in the correct way. And they get super disappointed about themselves and triathlon. And that is just a huge bummer because it doesn't need to be this way. So the goal of today is to teach you what you need to know to change your physiology. And once that physiology is changed, that's when you can start talking about what qualifying for Kona or Nice or Roth looks like. Okay, who qualifies for these races? It looks like it's the top 1 to 2% of the sport. And if you look at results and things like that, you're going to be like, oh, wow, like it really is only, the top 5 men in my age group. Or for women, usually a lot more difficult, the person who wins the age group. In a few of those age groups in the middle, maybe it's sometimes 1 or 2 people for women. But it is harder for women, especially in this new, very strange era where WTC is putting a lot of slots in some races and then very few slots in other races. Hopefully that evens out at some point. But it's actually not the top 1 to 2% of the sport. It is a group of people who can move their body continuously for 9, 10, maybe 11 hours, depending on your age group, without slowing down. If there is one thing that I can change about your guys' mindsets today, I want you to stop thinking about going fast, and I want you to start thinking about limiting your deceleration when you are performing. So again, how is that subset difference? How is that subset different? Those athletes have more room for error because they can move their bodies for 9 or 10 hours, but they also have this huge amount of fitness through effective long-term training. But even though they have that huge margin for error, they tend to not make mistakes in pacing, nutrition, or mindset. So in order to get ready to accomplish these goals, not only do you need to train a lot, you need to practice your habits around pacing, nutrition, and mindset in such a way that everything is automatic on race day. I cannot tell you the number of times that people come back and they try to tell me that they had gastrointestinal problems on the run. And my initial answer is it's the same every time. Nutrition issues are pacing issues in disguise. And we can almost always go back and find out, oh, you rode like an idiot for the first 90 minutes of the bike. That's why you had nutritional issues. Maybe you're not practicing your nutrition in every single workout. Maybe you're not trying out a whole bunch of different nutrition products. Those things, you have the opportunity to practice these things when you're in your daily training. Practice them. Don't just end up being like, I'll do it on my long ride. No, every single time. If you want to qualify for these races, it's not just your training, it's your habits. You will fall to the level of your habits in a long distance triathlon. And that is the thing that's going to govern how you do. So these people, they nail their habits all the time. When we send them their race plan the week before the race, they always look at it and they're like, this is what I already do all the time. And we're like, yeah, that's the point. When you go and do these big races, it is much more about simply executing what you are already able to do. So our big goal, we want to build our fitness so the performance is well within your ability. If you need to be perfect on race day in order to achieve your goal, you're not ready. It's not going to happen. So why do we want to do this? Why is this the goal? Building the fitness so the performance is well within our ability. So we want a freight train mindset. It gives us a freight train mindset versus a Ferrari mindset. We'll do more about the freight trains and Ferraris in a few slides. But in certain contexts, more is more. And training is one of them. Yes, we can get into some problems around under recovery. I don't really believe in overtraining. When everybody tells me that they're overtrained, I'm like, no, you're under recovered. You have probably done too much and not rested enough. That's not overtraining, that's under recovery. or you haven't set up your life in a certain way that allows you to absorb the training. So generally, it's more like under recovery than overtraining. And if we build a ton of fitness, you are going to be more likely to achieve your goal. Okay, why else do we want things to be well within our ability? It simplifies your race day. You can just focus on executing instead of stressing out whether or not you can actually pull this off. Yes, again, it's always still just a probability, but if you're reasonably sure that you can perform to what you're trying to do, it takes away a lot of stress. And then that leads to confidence. So preparation leads to confidence. Confidence leads to performance. And so if you can build so much fitness in your preparation, you're going to feel a lot more confident on race day. Okay, so this is kind of why you're here today. There's two approaches. I mean, there's actually like a million approaches, but in the context of this webinar, there's our approach, which is the way that we really think is the way to do it. And then there's the approach that I mostly see out there, which is probably called the minimum effective dose model. Today, we're calling it the Ferrari model. So I'm going to talk about the two approaches. So our approach, again, it's this abundance mindset. I have a lot of fitness. I've practiced my habits. I've practiced my nutrition. I've practiced my pacing. I understand what's going to happen on race day. This only happens through a lot of training. So again, we're building our fitness so the performance is well within our abilities. It gives us more margin for error. You are going to make mistakes on race day. I have never talked to an athlete that hasn't made at least one or two mistakes on race day. If you have built a freight train of fitness, those mistakes you're going to be able to shake off and keep moving. And again, it leads you to this sort of relaxed, confident approach when you're on race day. So that's approach A. That's what we coach our athletes to do. So the other approach, this is called the minimum effective dose, or what we might call the Ferrari method. So the minimum effective dose is an idea that's been floating around forever. It's particularly gotten a lot of play in the last 10 or 15 years as, podcasters and coaches and stuff like that have all adopted something like it. But basically the idea is, what is the minimum that I can do to be viable? That can work in some contexts. It's not going to work in this one because it leads to a scarcity mindset in your training where you are basically like, okay, I've done the bare minimum that I need to do to make this happen. It will generally lead to you having the ability to go fast, but low endurance or low fitness, which means that everything has to go right on race day. And we already said, if everything has to go right on race day, you're not ready for this, because long distance racing amplifies your errors. So you can get away with more errors the shorter the races. You can get away with pacing errors. You can get away with nutrition errors. You can get away with mindset errors in shorter races because they don't come back to bite you as much as they do in a long distance race. So if you have only done the minimum and you make a mistake because you've only done the minimum, as the day goes on, those mistakes are going to get amplified. And usually the effect is that you end up walking the run. And if you walk the run, you're not going to qualify for these races. It leads you to being anxious and tight on race day. I'm going to stop sharing for a second just to make sure that we don't have anybody else come in. I'm sure there's a button that would let me monitor this. Oh, here's a participant. Okay. Doesn't look like. Well, I don't see anybody else in the waiting room, so I think we are okay. Okay, freight trains and Ferraris. A little difference about the two of these things. So freight trains, low acceleration, takes them a little time to get going. But, oh my gosh, high inertia. Once they're moving, it is difficult to stop. Only a moderate top speed. Freight trains can get going, but it's nothing compared to a Ferrari. Inexorable as fuck, I like to say. You cannot, it's very similar to the high inertia idea, but inexorable as fuck has a little bit more like fun to it. Incredible fuel economy. These big diesel engines, yes, there's a lot of fuel that goes into them, but they can move an astonishing amount of freight a long distance without expending much fuel comparatively. You'll notice that that is in bold. That's probably the most important thing about freight trains. Low, easy maintenance, I mean, yes, they break, but, they're simple machines. They're easy to fix. This is the athlete that has just oodles of fitness, so much fitness. You probably know some athletes like this, some, freight train athletes. On the other side, we've got the minimum effective dose athlete, or the Ferrari athlete. They usually tend to be able to get up and get moving quickly. Low inertia, they're easy to stop, they're easy to get going. Incredible top speed, the opposite of inexorable, stop them easily. Really, really bad fuel economy. When you're driving a sports car fast, you're getting fuel economy in the single digits. You're really wasting a lot of fuel. I picked Ferraris because one of the jokes about owning a Ferrari is that it tends to be in the shop a lot. And if you don't train a lot, you are not going to be a very durable athlete. You're going to break down often. This is the just barely enough fitness model, and is one that is not going to work out. So we're trying to shift this mindset from Ferrari to freight train. I'm sure a lot of you have approached your races saying things like, okay, I need to be able to run the 26 miles at 8 minutes per mile. We want you to get away from that mindset. And I want you to be able to be like, I can run 8 minutes a mile for like 5, 6, 7 hours. Like, shit, I can go run that for half the day. I don't have to hold my speed on the bike for 112 miles. I could do that same wattage or speed. I could do that for 150 miles. I could swim, the pace I need to swim for 6K, not just 4K. So in other words, it's not about going fast. Don't be the sad rabbit. It's about slowing down as little as possible. That's the thing. I don't care what speed you can go. If you can not slow down during your race, you are going to have a really, really good chance of qualifying, because all of the people who haven't prepared well, who haven't set good habits, they're going to be the ones who start walking at mile 13 of the run. If I ever hear, well, I'm sure I'm going to hear this again. I've heard so many people say things like, it was going so well until the second half of the marathon. And I'm like, it wasn't going well if that's what happened. It was not going well. You screwed up. If you had to start walking in the second half of your marathon, it's not that it was going well. It was going terribly, and you hadn't gotten the memo yet. I'm sorry to be kind of harsh. If some of you have had that experience, the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. In lieu of that, we're going to plant a tree today. So, please, if you have a bad race ever again, don't say that it was going well until the second half of the marathon. Know that if you blew up in the second half of the marathon, you messed up in your training or your pacing or your nutrition or your mindset. That is a sad truth. That's the amplification of errors. The sad truth of Ironman is that mistakes that you make early in the bike are not apprehendable until mile 13 of the run. And then, it's over. So your race probably ended very early on. You just didn't know it yet, and that sucks. So let's talk about training for speed. I can swim 1:20 for 100 meters. I can ride at 300 watts. I can run at 7 minutes per mile. Okay, this is an earnest question here. What is missing from this? Anybody speak up. What's missing from this particular equation here?
Time.
Yes, thank you so much, Salvo. Time. Yes, absolutely. Time. So the athlete says these things, and the coach's response should be, is that for 25 meters or 1,500? Can you ride 300 in a sprint, or can you do it for 5 hours? Can you run 7-minute mile for a quarter mile, or can you do it for 25 miles? Heck, can you do it for 35 miles? You need to have this component of time associated with speed. So a lot of athletes train for speed. They think that they need to, I'm missing a closed quotation. I used to be an English teacher, everybody. I'm very sad at myself right now. I'll fix it. So if you're in this mindset of, I need to run this pace for this amount of time, that's a training for speed mindset. And usually what that athlete does is they're like, okay, I need to run that pace. So all of my training is going to be 8 minutes per mile. Has anybody ever adopted that before? Just stick your hand up if you have. I have. No? Kelly has. Okay, awesome. Love it. Yeah. I have definitely done that before. I have definitely been like, okay, I need to do X in this race, so I need to run this speed for this amount of time. What that ends up doing, if that athlete just goes out and runs that pace all the time, we end up with a tall but shaky column of fitness, is what I usually call it. And a tall but shaky column of fitness is very easy to knock over. So those athletes that think they need to run 8 minutes per mile, and they do that all the time, they usually end up really tired because they haven't been doing the training where they're doing a lot of running at 9, 10 minutes per mile, stuff like that. That is the robust engine building that is going to help you. So instead of training for speed, we're going to train for durability or duration. So let's build a huge pyramid of fitness. You can only build a pyramid as tall as the base is wide. Don't throw like the Coit Tower at me or stuff like that. Don't throw like modern marvels of engineering at me. We're talking about pyramids that are assembled out of like blocks in 3000 BC. You need a very wide base in order to get as tall as some of those pyramids. So just reprising some ideas here. The difference in training. So the fast rabbit, the fast and sad rabbit, or the Ferrari, tends to do things like high intensity interval training. There's a few caveats here. I'll get into them probably in the Q&A section. But HIIT is a dirty word. I mean, it's only one letter away from shit, and it is kind of shit, especially given how much attention it's gotten in the past few years. There's a place for it. It's not as big a place as people think. So speed training, there's a lot of high intensity interval training. They usually do a lot of speed sessions, like more than 2 a week. You really shouldn't ever do more than 2 intensity focused sessions per week. Lots of quality sessions. I hear this all the time. People say, oh, it's my quality run. I'm like, every workout is a quality workout. Like, that's just the way, like your coach went through the process of including it in the program. It's all quality. So if you ever see a program that is talking about quality sessions, have a real question with that coach. Speed athletes tend to not have many long workouts. They don't progress the long workouts, so the long workouts don't get longer over time. And they tend to focus on increasing speed or wattage. So they talk about getting faster or increasing their FTP or stuff like that. That all leads to that shaky but tall column of fitness rather than the durable athlete. In terms of speed and power, what we always want to do, instead of making it higher, we want to extend your ability to hold it for longer. So, if you're super excited about your ability to hold 250 watts for 30 minutes, let's make it an hour. Let's make it 75 minutes. Let's make it 90 minutes. Let's see how long we can spread that out. Let's see. All right, Eli's jumping off. No problem, Eli. If you're still here, we'll follow up with a recording. So to be the happy turtle or the freight train, We want to focus on increasing the amount of work we can do. And our goal is to improve economy rather than speed. Yes, we will use speed in our training, but it's not the goal. Every session has a purpose when we're training for durability. Strength training is crucial. And success looks like that moment when you're like, I think I can run 8 minutes per mile for like 5 hours. Like that's what it looks like when you have this incredibly robust endurance ability where you're basically like, I can do anything. It's like the uncle from Napoleon Dynamite who's like, I bet I could throw this football over those mountains. That's how you want to feel. So there's another mindset shift here. So speed mindset, you're in this place of thinking that the workout is a rehearsal for the race. That's how you get into that. I need to run 8 minutes per mile. So I need to go out and do all of my workouts at 8 minutes per mile. Otherwise, I won't have success. We want to get away from that. And we want to get into this durability mindset. So a workout are individual blocks that you are assembling into the athlete you are becoming. Speed mindset athletes usually want to be able to do it now, which is why they're always going out and basically rehearsing the race. These are the same athletes that are like, I signed up for an Ironman. I should do a marathon, right? And you're like, no, you're going to do some long runs, but please don't go do a marathon. That's just going to screw you up. That's basically firing one of your race bullets. The durability mindset is everything I do contributes to this pyramid that I'm building. And you can pick whatever metaphor you want. Jelly beans in a jelly bean jar, coins in a piggy bank. I don't care. As long as you are thinking about your training as something that is building over time. All right. Now we're finally going to get into how we do this. So before you embark on this journey, I have 3 things that I want you to do. And sadly, number 1 is actually like 10 things, but I want you to address your movement dysfunctions first. Go get a swim analysis. You can do it with us. You can do it with someone else. If you want a list of swim smooth coaches that are in your particular area, I can give that to you. But go get a swim analysis because it's going to help you not only be a faster swimmer, but a more injury resistant swimmer. Get a bike fit. Oh my God, please get a bike fit. Same reason for the swim analysis. Get a gait analysis. Find out what you are doing wrong in the skill aspects of your sport. And from a trained professional, hear how you're going to fix that. Go see a PT or a movement specialist. Hear what is wrong with the way that you move. And then please do the exercises that they prescribe you. Don't just think that by going to the PT, you're going to be fixed. No. If your body doesn't work, it's not your body's fault. It's your fault for not doing the work. Okay, next thing, once you've taken care of all that stuff, measure your current volume. So get your average training volume from the last 12 weeks. This is really easy to do in Training Peaks or whatever trade. If you're using an Excel spreadsheet to track your training, you can use your sum function and figure that out. But I want you to measure that current volume. And then we're going to build a basic week. Once you've measured your volume, so let's see, most athletes are good at this. Just drop it into chat. What do you guys think what do you think you averaged per week of training over the last 12 weeks? Don't go looking for it. Just type it into the chat, just what you think the number was.
Hours?
Yeah, hours. All right, Chris says 8, Matthew says 11, Salvo says 11, Kelly 7 to 10, 10 to 12, 9. Okay, awesome. So the first thing the first way that I'm going to break your heart is that your likely endurance commitment was twice that number. So if it was between 7 and 10 hours, your commitment to training was probably 14 to 20. If it was 11 hours, it was probably around 22 hours. This is just the truth of this hobby that you have picked up. And now everybody is like, oh, why not darts? Well, I mean, you know why. Like, this is a really good activity to do, but you got to get to the pool. You got to fix the flat tire. You got to get your run shoes on. You got to find your heart rate monitor. You have to take so many showers. Oh my God, the showers. So your commitment is about twice what it is. And if you want to qualify for some of these long distance races, you are probably going to have to average somewhere north of 16 hours of training. If somebody has told you that they can do it on 12 hours of training, I guarantee you that person has like some semi-professional endurance capacity in their background. If you go and look at the people who are like, qualify for Kona on 12 hours of training, usually if you scratch down below the surface for a little while, you discover something like, oh, you've been doing this for 15 years and you used to be a professional. I wonder how you can do it on 12 hours of training. It's really going to have to be probably like more than 16 hours to do this effectively. It's probably going to be a little closer to 20. I'm sorry to say that to you, because as we just established, your actual commitment is going to be about twice that amount. This is where you're going to have to start working with your spouse, your coach, your kids, your boss, the other people that hold a stake in your existence. And you need to figure out how you are going to build a week that you can repeat week after week. Yes, there are going to be some weeks where you take easier weeks, 100%. But generally, you're going to be doing these bigger loading races. So talking with the people that are in your life is a huge part of being able to qualify for these races. If some of you are here because you saw the article that the PDF that we've put out, this is one of the crucial things, is getting your family and your workplace on board for what is likely a 2 to 3 year commitment. Okay, here's a sample week. You know, this may not be your week, but we're doing most of the sports every day. We're swimming 4 or 5 times a week for 3 or 4K. Strength is here. You're usually doing 2 longer rides a week. It is very difficult these days to qualify for these longer races without doing 2 longer rides. You got a weekend longer ride and maybe a midweek longer ride, something like that. And yeah, if you add up those numbers on the right side, you know, like it's pretty big. I think the low end of this is like 17.5 and the high end is like 30. That is very much right in the middle of the sweet spot of people who are qualifying for Kona. That's how many hours it's probably going to take. You'll notice in this one that we've got the long run, you know, sort of flip-flop from a conventional long ride on Saturday, long run on Sunday. There's no evidence that running on tired legs makes you a better triathlete. So it can be personal preference, you know, and what I would say is that whichever sport is weaker, do that workout on Saturday. That's the one that when you're probably a little fresher, because Friday tends to be just a swim, maybe a mobility session, an easy run, an easy spin, something like that. Okay, there's a lot on this page. I promise I will try to summarize it pretty well, but this is about tracking your improvement, because you want to know that you are becoming the freight train. That's really what this slide should be called. It should be called becoming the freight train. Every 4 weeks, you want to do some kind of test set to see if your training is working. If your training is not working, you need to do something else. So a test set that we give people a lot, 10 by 300 or 10 by 400 with only 20 seconds rest in between, where you get slightly faster each interval, but you never get much faster than Ironman pace. So you start slower than Ironman pace and you build up to right around Ironman pace. If you're getting fitter, your total time for the workout should shrink, because you're only ever taking 20 seconds per in between intervals. So you only get 3 minutes of rest over the course of this long swim. If you're getting fitter, your total time should shrink because you're probably going to be swimming a little quicker because you're building economy. If you're not getting faster, there's probably a technique fault that's standing in your way. Go get that swim analysis. On the bike, ride easy for 2 or 3 for 60 minutes, and then ride for 2 to 3 hours at your goal heart rate or your goal power, that kind of thing. Ideally, you're using speed or power because heart rate is a really, really good measure of what's happening inside your body. If you're getting fitter on the bike, you will see your heart rate steadily decrease across these tests. So, maybe your goal power is 210 watts for your iron distance race. You ride easy for 60 minutes. You ride 3 hours at 210 watts. The first time you do it, you see 150 beats per minute. The next time you do it, if you see 146 beats per minute and conditions are roughly the same, that's the hard part. You kind of got to adjust for that. You're getting fitter. The run is very similar, warm up and then run for 60 minutes, this time at a fixed heart rate. You pick a heart rate that's very doable. And if you are getting fitter, you will go faster you will cover more distance during that 60 minutes. And then this is the cornerstone of one of the things that we do at Campfire. This is not our idea. We wholesale ripped this off from the great 𝗪𝗪𝗏. Gordo is an amazing coach. If you don't subscribe to his Substack, Endurance Essentials, it's the best $7 that you're going to spend every month. I mean, other than hiring us as a coach, which is more than $7 a month. Gordo's a genius. He writes about things in really, really clear, effective ways. I would really recommend it. It's a Substack. It's called Endurance Essentials. Easy to find. If you sign up for a year, it's $70. I have no relationship with Gordo other than he's a good old friend. Very, very good resource. So every 4 weeks, starting about 16 weeks out, you're going to do the volume, the duration of the race spread out over 2 or 3 days. And ideally, as you get closer to the race, you shrink it from 3 or 4 days to 2 to 3 days, maybe even just 2 days. On Friday, nice solid 4K swim, maybe that 10 by 400 set that I outlined on the previous page. 90 minutes with about 45 minutes at your goal power with a short little run off the bike. Generally always running off the bike just to build that habit. Saturday, you ride for 5 or 6 hours, where over the course of these 16 weeks, you sort of extend the amount of time that you're at goal power. You don't try to bring the power up, you just try to do more of it. So maybe when you start, it's a 5-hour ride and you're doing 4 45-minute intervals at goal power. Maybe you work up to a 6-hour ride with 5 1-hour intervals at goal power. It's a big change. Remember, goal power is really just sort of like moderate intensity. So you should be able to do this. Again, easy 30 to 45-minute run off the bike. We're just building the habit. Yeah, and that 30 to 45-minute run off the bike, please don't run it at the pace that you want to run it in your race. Just go and run. Don't make it a rehearsal. On Sunday, 2 to 3 hour run with 3 by 3, 4, or 5 miles at your goal pace, or your goal heart rate, or your goal power with 1-minute recoveries. And then please, after all of this, go out for a very, very easy recovery spin and then take Monday off, or maybe Monday is like a recovery spin or a recovery swim or something like that. So this is kind of the cornerstone of the way that we coach athletes to iron distance events, is we really try to build this huge, robust level of fitness, because I'm guessing some of you guys at the moment are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. This is the reason why it takes years, because you have to work up to being able to do this amount of training in the year that you're going to qualify. So many athletes come to me and say, like, I have 6 months to train for this and I want to qualify. And I'm like, are you like, tell me about your background, because if it's not like a professional endurance athlete of some capacity, it's not possible. It's not happening. building this kind of fitness takes a long time. And too many coaches out there are going to tell you that it's possible on 12 hours of training. Most coaches have been endurance athletes for like 20 to 30 years. So their experience is remarkably different from somebody that has been in the sport 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that kind of thing. So please be Crush. Everybody loves Crush. Crush is one of the best characters from Finding Nemo. We want to be Crush the turtle. And even though Bugs is the best, Bugs is awesome. He's one of the greatest cartoon inventions of all time. We don't want to be this Bugs. We don't want to be tired Bugs. Don't be the tired rabbit. So I'm going to stop sharing in a second, but we're going to go to our questions page. I'm going to put a link in the chat. If you guys want to talk individually about how this would look for your own training and racing, would love to do that. Yes, there is probably some kind of component of, why don't you come and work with us? But, these are, what's more important to me is that people are doing this training correctly. Because I've seen so much disappointment, so much heartache, so much money wasted in training poorly or racing poorly, and then being heartbroken or broke or having spent all this time. And really, it's so much simpler than most people make it out to be. Train more. Don't train so much that you get hurt, and evaluate what you're doing as you go, is basically the way that I would kind of